You are listening to Keith Price's Curtain Call.
This is Keith Price for Keith Price's Curtain Call, and it is one of those things where when you get the opportunity to go out into the world and find out what's going on in theater and find out how theater is impacting people not only here in New York City but also truly on a much more universal place. And I am sitting here now, I just got through having lunch in the big city with this fantastic woman who I have to say that within 5 minutes of sitting around and just listening to her speak about the passion that she has for something that I didn't think I would find a passion even within me, of Shakespeare and the importance of Shakespeare. I'm talking to one of the original founding artistic directors of the Shakespeare Company out of Lenox, Massachusetts, the New York best-selling author, actress, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Yes.
She's been on Doctor Who back in the day when people didn't know that Doctor Who was what it was all about. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Tina Packer. How are you, my dog?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
Yeah,
Keith.
well, you're pretty fabulous, actually. I have to say, this luncheon was really a great thing because we're talking about Shakespeare's Company's new season that's starting in May, I believe it is.
Well, we actually open the end of June. We start rehearsing in May, but we open the end of June.
And again, we're talking classical theater, people. This is Shakespeare. This is you're doing even the original plays that you're going to be having in the season all have a classic theme of some sort.
They're related to the Shakespeare plays in some way, shape or form. But if you remember, Shakespeare was a new playwright at the time he was writing. So we try and do new playwrights as well. And this year we're really looking at the themes to do with women. We're obviously, because I am a woman, but there are several powerful women in the company. So we are very conscious of women's role in society, but we're also conscious of prejudice within society. We're really trying to struggle with how is it that you create a just and articulate and creative society. How do you do that? And we think theatre is one of the ways in which you can do that.
I love that. Tina Packer with me here on the Curtain Call, and we're talking about it. Now, she has a book that's called Women of Will, in which, now this subtitle, The Remarkable Evolution of Shakespeare's Female Characters. And I was, clicking around online because that's what you have to do before you come in when you're meeting people that you don't know. And there was a review that talked about how the conversation basically was that you were able to look at Shakespeare's life itself through the women and where he was as a person and what he was going through. It's like, what was one of the things that you found to be the most fascinating?
Well, when I got through almost all the plays, directing them, I'd been in quite a lot of them, but I had directed a lot of them, which meant that I was looking at them thoroughly. I began to see this pattern, and it meant that all the women in the plays now started taking on a different dimension for me, because I'd think, in Taming of the Shrew, a play everybody knows, but it's a very cruel play. Right. It says this woman has got to be tamed, and she can't, until she's tamed, she's not worthy of being married. Well, for me, that's a load of rubbish. It's cruel and unusual, and he starves her and he throws her clothes around and he won't let her go where she wants to. And the worst thing of all, he denies what she says. He keeps on contradicting her. Well, he would get prosecuted in this day and age for such behavior. So from my point of view, I start looking at that, and then I suddenly think, but Shakespeare was very young when he wrote that, and he was. And you start seeing in all his early plays, women are much more stereotypes, caricatures, and then as he starts maturing, you see the way in which he's shifting towards women. And then by the time you get to the late plays, he's saying, look, guys, if we don't do what the women tell us to do, they've got a much better handle on life than we have. We better do what we do unless we want to stay in unending violence. Wow. So you can actually see his progression as a human being through looking at the way in which he writes about women.
Tina Packer with me here on the Curtain Call. And again, we're talking about Shakespeare Company's upcoming season that's going to be happening up in, I forget the city, Lenox, Massachusetts. I was Lenox.
You have to come here, Keith.
I want to. They were just talking earlier about this whole, like, we're going to get a bus and we're going to go. And I'm like, all right, I'm down. I love a road trip. But one of the things that you talk about here at the luncheon that I thought was so fascinating and so wonderful, and I also was reiterating this with the current artistic director, we were saying that this influence that you have in terms of using theater and indoctrinating theater very early in life to young people, that it has changed the way that they look at themselves. It changes the way that they look at the world, and the way that they carry themselves through the world. Has that been a founding tenet that you've always believed in?
Absolutely. Because if you just think for a moment, if you're an actor, you start taking on other people's words and owning them. But if you're taking on Shakespeare's words, you're taking on the greatest vocabulary ever known, and suddenly you're inhabiting this world where a character will say something and you didn't know you thought that, but suddenly you are thinking that, or it articulates something. And one of the problems with kids is they often don't have the words to say how frustrated or upset you have. I think we work in the court system. So kids that are in trouble with the law, it's often about them, they can't articulate what it is their frustration and anger is, and I would say 100% have by and large had a rough deal in some way, shape or form. And they're trying to figure out if they actually can get up and have the words to say it, their life shifts. Once they, I remember we were doing a program in Roslindale Lockup, which is a very difficult lockup for juvenile offenders, violent offenders. They would do Hamlet, and they'd also talk about their own lives at the same time. And they could actually see their lives, or Macbeth, they could see their lives in those characters. And when they start, I'll tell you of accidental deaths put on by cunning and false cause, they were talking about themselves. And actually they had a depth of understanding that you and I probably don't have. Do you know what I mean? Because it had happened to them, whereas we just imagine it. And I remember the shift in there to think, this fancy schmancy bloke Shakespeare, who I thought was just for, snobby people from Cambridge, actually isn't. It's for me. And so there's the kind of ownership of a great icon. There's the poetry in their lives, and then there's suddenly a realization that there's a perspective. Added to which, there's just the discipline of theatre. You've got to learn your lines, interact with other people, and get it up on time. You can't say, sorry, can't get it up today, got to do it tomorrow. Today is the day, and it's going up, ready or not, and they're always ready, of course.
I love that. Tina Packer with me here on the Curtain Call. And again, you talked about, we were just having a moment with my former colleague, and we were talking about this court system where this is an option to learn and perform Shakespeare as community service?
Yes. Well, Paul Parachi used to be the headmaster of Lenox High School, where we were, and then he became a judge in Berkshire County. He went to law school and then became a judge, and he did a lot of very innovative things with the children who were caught up in the court systems. And one of the first things he did was, he said, I saw how Shakespeare affected my high school. I want the kids in Berkshire County who are in trouble with the law to have a chance to do Shakespeare. And of course, and so he would talk to them. He knew them all personally. He would talk to them because they'd be what their situation was, why they were doing the bad things they were doing, what was happening to them. And then he'd say, I think you need to do the Shakespeare program. And of course, when they discovered it, they'd always say, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm not doing that. But he would persuade them to take on Shakespeare rather than being locked up or doing the community service. And it actually does give them a sense of themselves, which, doing community service is kind of, you're forced to do it somehow. It's not that it can't work, but it also actually getting up and knowing your family might be there, and certainly the probation officer is going to be there. The judge always came himself, and you've got to get it out there. And you're performing in front of 100 people. It confronted their worst fears, but when they actually did it, their sense of themselves and their sense of their self-worth and their ability to know they could do Shakespeare was just enormous. I can't tell you the difference that it makes in their inner life, their inner sense of who they were and what they were.
Oh my God, Tina Packer, we can talk like all afternoon now at this point, and I know you got to get out of here soon. But again, the book is called Women of Will, which is the remarkable evolution of Shakespeare's female characters. And you are all about this Shakespeare company in Lenox, Massachusetts. See, I remembered it now.
Yes.
See, 3 or 4 times and I'll get it.
You're going to come up and see Merchant of Venice this summer and Two Gentlemen of Verona this summer and Twelfth Night this summer.
And get over my own intimidation factor with Shakespeare.
I promise you will. I promise you will come up. And if you think about Merchant of Venice for a moment, it's a play all about prejudice. Everybody is a bigot in that play, or they repress the other gender. Talking about all the genders, everybody's repressing some gender or other. And by the time you finish it, there's kind of glimmers of hope that we can behave better than this. We don't have to always be mocking the other person, deriding the other person. We actually can find a level at which we love the other person. So I hope you'll come and see it, Keith.
Are you kidding? We already were talking. There's buses. They're going to do all kinds of stuff for us to get up there. So, Miss Tina, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me.
It's lovely.
And again, you guys, the book is called Women of Will, Tina Packer's wonderful book. Go to shakespearecompany.org, I believe it is, right on the website, and you can find out more about what's going on up in the Berkshires, which I hear is absolutely fabulous. I might have not had the opportunity to go, but now this is the absolute perfect way for me to have an introduction. So thank you, Tina, and thank you, the Shakespeare Company, Shakespeare, for just taking what you're doing. You're taking theater and you're putting it in a context that people may not believe that they will understand, but at the same time will be impacted by it for the rest of their lives. That is so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And we will be back.
Brush up your Shakespeare and they'll all kowtow.